Good morning. I'm Carl with the Honda Public Library. Last month, we looked at the city of San Antonio's history of flooding and how water was an obstacle for the city's development that shaped its infrastructure. Today, we're going to look again at San Antonio's relationship with water, but this time as a resource. Where does San Antonio get its water from? How is this resource managed? And how have sourcing and management methods changed over time? Let's answer those questions and more in this chapter of Monday Memories. The earliest form of water infrastructure in Texas was the acequia. Acequias are a type of community-operated water channel used for drinking and irrigation. The term comes from the Arabic asaqia, water conduit. The word and the practice were brought to Spain during the Arab conquest of Iberia in the 8th century. Much of Spain is arid or semi-arid, as were its colonies in what is now the southwestern U.S. Relying on rainfall for agriculture was risky, so having acequias to bring the water from other sources was key. For those who lived far from an acequia, the option existed to purchase water from an aguador. Translated water carrier or water seller in English, aguadores collected water from a source, a river, a well, water pumps, etc., and transported it directly to people's homes for a fee. San Antonio in the late 1800s had yet to urbanize or industrialize in a way a lot of other big cities in the United States had. George Maverick, an influential citizen, offered a proposal for a waterworks in 1873. Maverick's plan was deemed too expensive, and instead the city decided to expand the existing acequia system. The new acequias failed to improve the water quality, with most of them ending up as cholera-spreading garbage dumps. The whole project ended up costing more than a waterworks would have, with none of the benefits. The city would not make that mistake again. In 1878, San Antonio's mayor, Francois P. Giroux, awarded a waterworks contract to French-born entrepreneur Jean-Baptiste Lacoste. Lacoste was the owner of a revolutionary new business, the first of its kind in San Antonio, ice production. Producing ice required a steady source of fresh water, more than could be supplied by acequias or aguadores. Lacoste's waterworks were sourced from a reservoir pumped upstream from the San Antonio River. Also, if that last name reminds you of Lacoste, Texas, that's not a coincidence. The town, originally named Fernando, was renamed for Lacoste in 1898. Enter one George Washington Brackenridge, one of San Antonio's wealthiest men. He had made his fortune profiteering during the Civil War and now sought to grow his influence through the acquisition of the city waterworks. He bought out Lacoste in 1880. Earlier in the decade, he had also purchased the land containing the source of the San Antonio River, the so-called Blue Hole. The acquisition was very controversial, and further controversy erupted during the sale of the land back to the city, where politicians accused him of corruption and bribery. Fishier than Brackenridge's business decisions was the odor of the river at this point. San Antonio had grown significantly with the arrival of the railroad, faster than the infrastructure could keep up with, and the river had become quite polluted. Using this water as drinking water was a questionable practice, and the water business struggled as a result. Why would people subscribe to an expensive waterworks installation when they can get fresher water as needed from aguadores? Brackenridge turned to a new source of water which has seen success up north, drilling deep underground to use groundwater. In the 1890s, drilling down to a depth of 890 feet, Brackenridge's company struck water and the resulting gusher spouted 20 feet into the air. This well produced 3 million gallons of clean drinking water every day. The source they had discovered was the Edwards Aquifer, one of the largest artesian aquifers in North America. At the time, it was not known that the aquifer was the source of many of the city's rivers, nor was the idea of conservation really understood. Brackenridge watched as overpumping of the groundwater drained the San Antonio rivers that ran through his land. He wrote in 1905, "I have seen this bold, bubbling, laughing river dwindle and fade away. It is now only a little rivulet, whose flow a fern leaf could stop, and its waters are hardly enough to quench the thirst of a red bird. The river is my child, and it is dying, and I cannot stay here to see its last gasps." In 1905, Brackenridge sold the waterworks company to a Belgian company. It changed hands a few more times before eventually being purchased by the city in 1924, after which it was renamed the City Water Board. In 1992, the City Water Board, the City Wastewater Department, and the Alamo Water Conservation and Reuse District all merged to form SAWS, the San Antonio Water System. The remnants of the old waterworks are still present in the city and contribute a lot towards tourism. The reservoir that Lacoste built is today the San Antonio Botanical Garden. The headwater property that Brackenridge owned is today the 343-acre Brackenridge Park, which also contains the San Antonio Zoo, the Whitty Museum, the Japanese Tea Gardens, and the Sunken Garden Theater. To this day, San Antonio still relies almost exclusively on the Edwards Aquifer for its drinking water. Managing the aquifer requires delicate care. While the aquifer spans a large geographic area, water only enters the aquifer easily in the recharge zone, where the limestone layers are exposed in just a way to allow water to trickle down. Keeping this recharge area undeveloped is key, and the city of San Antonio has special zoning restrictions in place to make sure drinking water remains clean and available. Rainfall can be scarce, and even when large storms arrive, the recharge zone may not be able to capture all the water that falls. During the so-called Great Texas Drought of the 1950s, the number of Texas farms and ranches shrank from 345,000 to 247,000, and the state's rural population declined from more than a third of the population to less than a quarter. That drought lasted 7 years, but going forward it's likely that droughts longer than that could become the norm. A megadrought is a prolonged drought lasting 2 decades or longer. Scientists have used this term to describe what's been happening to this region since the year 2000, calling it the Southwestern North American Megadrought. With this new climate crisis to contend with, as well as San Antonio's population growing faster than ever, SAWS has tried to diversify San Antonio's water sources and rely not so much on the Edwards, but it has been difficult. Proposals for a new reservoir along the Medina River, the so-called Applewhite Reservoir, were made during the 1990s, but the proposal died for cost reasons. In 2016, the Vista Ridge pipeline was built to bring in water from further inland, but the whole process was controversial, and many in the city and at the pipeline's source have been strongly opposed to the project. SAWS has had more success by conserving the water that it already has access to. In 1996, the Federal Endangered Species Act forced SAWS to cut their pumping by a whopping 60% to protect the habitat of the Texas blind salamander. What is it with San Antonio's infrastructure being influenced by obscure endangered species? To make the most of the water that could be pumped, the city installed more than 130 miles of pipelines channeling recycled rainwater to golf courses, industrial customers, and even into the Riverwalks Canal. SAWS also devised the Aquifer Storage Program to make up for the limited intake of the aquifer recharge zones. San Antonio residents were given cash rebates on their bills for using less water, which encouraged the use of native, drought-tolerant plants in landscaping, a practice called xeriscaping. Change is never easy, but San Antonians have proved remarkably adaptable to these restrictions. Mayor Ron Nirenberg has said of the success of these programs, "Perhaps we have been forced to see this as hugely important faster than most cities, but the fact right now is that for the first time in human history, more people are living in urban communities than rural ones, and providing safe and clean and cheap water for these people in the cities is a global challenge. Making sure the world's populations are supplied with potable and available water is priority number one these days, and I think San Antonio's water policies and programs can be a model for cities all over the world." Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next month for our next chapter of Monday Memories.